Chapter 10, Music. Benjamin still hadn't told anybody he wasn't Mark Miller. His grades had never been better. Mark Miller is a lot smarter than Benjamin Nushmutt, he thought. When they chose up teams for kickball, he was always the first one picked. Mark Miller is a better kicker than Benjamin Nushmutt, he realized. The girls in the class liked him too. Mark Miller is better looking than Benjamin Nushmutt, he decided. But unfortunately, he knew he had to tell Mrs. Jules his real name. He sighed, then slowly raised his hand. Mrs. Jules gave him a tambourine. He had been so busy thinking about his problem, he hadn't noticed that Mrs. Jules was passing out musical instruments. She had just asked, "Who would like the tambourine?" So when he raised his hand, she gave it to him. "Who would like the triangle?" asked Mrs. Jules. Joe raised his hand and Mrs. Jules gave it to him. "Why is it called a triangle?" asked Joe. "I don't know," said Mrs. Jules. "Maybe because it's shaped like a triangle," suggested John. "No, that can't be it," said Mrs. Jules. "When the tambourine would have to be called a circle." "Maybe it was invented by a person named Joe Triangle," said Rondi. "That's probably it," said Mrs. Jules. She held up the next instrument. It was a glockenspiel. "Who would like the glockenspiel?" she asked. Sherry raised her hand. Nobody asked why it was called a glockenspiel. It was obvious. Mrs. Jules gave the bells to Stephen. "Why are they called bells?" he asked. Nobody knew. Joy got the bongo drums. Todd got the bass drum. Jenny snared the snare drum, and Leslie got the kettle drum. When they banged on them, it hurt everybody else's eardrums. Mrs. Jules gave one cymbal to Calvin and the other cymbal to BB. DJ got the gong. The three Erics got kazoos. Mrs. Jules shouted, "Uno, dos, tres, cuatro." The children all played their instruments. They shook, rattled, rocked, and rolled. Joy bonged her bongos. DJ gonged his gong. Sherry glockened her glockenspiel. Stephen jingled his bells. Calvin and BB slapped their cymbals together, and Joe's triangle went ting. But something didn't sound right. "What's wrong, Mark?" Mrs. Jules shouted over the music. "Why aren't you playing the tambourine?" "My name's not Mark," said Benjamin. It's Benjamin Nushmutt. I'm sorry for not telling you before." "What?" asked Mrs. Jules. "I can't hear you." "My name isn't Mark," he said. "It's Benjamin." "Louder," said Mrs. Jules. So everyone played louder. Todd bashed his bass drum. Leslie cooked on her kettle drum. Calvin and BB crashed their cymbals together, and Joe's triangle went ting. "My name is Benjamin," shouted Benjamin. Mrs. Jules put her hand to her ear. "Louder," she said. So everyone played louder. DJ kabonged his gong. Joy conjoed her banjos. Paul splacked his castanets. Jenny spaghettied her snare drum. Calvin and BB whammered their cymbals. And Joe's triangle went ting. "My name's Benjamin Nushmutt," hollered Benjamin Nushmutt. "Louder!" yelled Mrs. Jules. So everyone played louder. The three Erics screamed into their kazoos. Calvin and BB ran to opposite sides of the room with their cymbals, then charged toward each other. Suddenly, the door flew open and a man entered. Benjamin had never seen him before. The whole class became very quiet. It was Mr. Kidswatter, the principal. Calvin and BB screeched to a halt just in time. Their cymbals were less than an inch apart. "Is something the matter, Mr. Kidswatter?" asked Mrs. Jules. "Several teachers have complained about your music," said Mr. Kidswatter. "Their students are having trouble hearing." "I understand," said Mrs. Jules. "Good," said Mr. Kidswatter. He walked out of the room. "Okay, you heard, Mr. Kidswatter," said Mrs. Jules. "We'll have to play louder so everyone can hear. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro." They shook, rattled, rocked, and rolled. Benjamin frampled his tambourine. "Excellent, Mark!" shouted Mrs. Jules. He smiled. He had never played so well before. Mark Miller is a better musician than Benjamin Nushmut, he thought. Chapter 11. Cathy and DJ. Down on the playground, Cathy was singing her favorite song. Wayside School is falling down, falling down, falling down. Wayside School is falling down, my fair lady. Kids go splat as they hit the ground, hit the ground, hit the ground. Kids go splat as they hit the ground, my fair lady. DJ was walking across the playground with his head down. "I'm Dr. Jolly," said Louis. Louis called DJ Dr. Jolly because he was always smiling, but now DJ's smile was upside down. He looked up at Louis. Louis had never seen such a sad face. "What's wrong?" he asked. DJ just shook his head, then looked back down at the ground and sadly walked away. Louis felt like crying. "Hey, Louis, what's wrong with DJ?" asked Ron. "He's so sad," said Dee Dee. "I don't know," said Louis, shaking his head. "Hey, you guys want to play kickball?" "No, thanks," said Dee Dee. "I can't have fun when DJ is unhappy." "Me neither," said Ron. Across the playground, all the children quit their games when they saw DJ. Nobody could have fun with DJ looking so sad. Except Cathy. She sang, "Broken bones and blood and gore, blood and gore, blood and gore, broken bones and blood and gore, my fair lady. We don't have no school no more, school no more, school no more. We don't have no school no more, my fair lady." The bell rang. DJ sadly looked up at the school and sighed. "Hey, Deej, snap out of it," said Myron. DJ stared through his friend. "You want to walk up the stairs with us, Dojo?" asked Damien. DJ shook his head. "I need to be alone," he mumbled. Damien and Myron looked at each other, then started up the stairs, leaving their sad friend behind. DJ headed on up, but stopped halfway between the 9th and 10th floors and sat down. He lowered his face into his hands and cried. A moment later, someone burst out laughing. DJ opened his eyes and saw Cathy standing over him. "You shouldn't sit on the stairs, dumb jerk," said Cathy with glee. "I almost kicked you in the head." Cathy always called DJ dumb jerk. She didn't like DJ because he was always smiling. Now she was glad to see him so sad. "Hi, Cathy," said DJ. She plopped down on the stairs next to him. "What happened?" she asked. "Did your dog die?" She laughed. DJ shook his head. "Are your parents getting divorced?" she asked hopefully. "Did your house burn down?" "No," said DJ. "My great-grandfather gave me a gold watch. It was over 100 years old. I brought it to school today and—" "You lost it!" Cathy exclaimed with delight. DJ sadly nodded. Cathy laughed. "Oh boy, are you going to get in trouble!" She rubbed her hands together. "Your parents will ground you forever." "No, my parents never punish me," said DJ. "They know I learned from my mistakes." "Oh," said Cathy, a little disappointed. "But your great-grandfather will hate you," she said, "and he'll never give you another present for the rest of your life, not even for your birthday." "No, he loves me no matter what I do," said DJ. "He likes people, not things." Again, Cathy was disappointed. "But the watch was worth a lot of money," she tried, "and you'll have to pay for it out of your allowance." She laughed triumphantly, sure she had gotten him this time. "I don't get an allowance," said DJ. "I don't like money." Cathy frowned. Still, she knew there had to be some reason why he was sad about losing the watch. "You'll never know what time it is," she squawked. "So?" asked DJ. "Time isn't real." Cathy didn't know what DJ meant by that, but she didn't care. "Well, if you don't know what time it is," she told him, "you'll miss all your favorite television shows." "I don't have a favorite television show," said DJ. "I never watch television." He thought a moment. "I'm not sure if we have a TV in our house or not. Maybe there's one in a closet somewhere." Cathy glared at him. "Well, then how come you're so sad you lost that dumb watch?" she demanded. "I'm afraid a bird might think it's food and choke on it," said DJ. "Is that all?" shrieked Cathy. DJ smiled. "I guess you're right," he said. "A bird probably wouldn't choke. In fact, maybe he could use it to make a nest. I hope so, don't you? He hopped up to his feet. Thanks for talking to me, Cathy. I feel a lot better now. You're a good friend. He hurried up to Mrs. Jules's room, taking the stairs 2 and 3 at a time. As DJ's smile turned up, Cathy's smile turned down. She followed up after him, grumbling to herself. He doesn't like money. He doesn't worry about time. He never watches television. Why is he always so happy? Everyone in Mrs. Jules's class cheered when they saw DJ enter the room smiling. Cathy walked in behind him, frowning. Mrs. Jules was getting ready to show a movie. She gave DJ a piece of black construction paper. Hey, look! Exclaimed Myron. Audley found a watch! Oddly, the bird dropped the watch on the windowsill. Cathy couldn't believe it. It's DJ's! She griped. Myron gave the watch to DJ. Here, you can have it, Cathy, said DJ with a big smile. It's worth a lot of money, and this way you won't miss any of your favorite television shows. Cathy took the watch from him and put it around her wrist. It'll probably make my skin turn green, she groused. Mrs. Jules started the movie projector. Stephen turned off the lights. Damien pulled down the shades. DJ held the piece of black construction paper under his nose because his smile was so bright. Chapter 12. Pencils. Jason borrowed a pencil from Allison. When he gave it back to her, it was full of teeth marks. Allison held the pencil by its point. Yuck, she said, you chewed on it. Jason felt awful. It is very embarrassing to borrow somebody's pencil and then chew on it. Sorry, he said. I didn't do it on purpose. You can keep it, said Allison. She dropped the pencil on Jason's desk, then raised her hand. Mrs. Jules, can I go to the bathroom? I have to wash my hands. Jason slobbered all over my pencil. Everybody laughed. Jason turned red. I'm sorry, Allison, he said. I know it's a disgusting habit. I just can't help it. Don't let Jason touch any of my books, said Allison as she headed out of the room. He might eat them. Everybody laughed again. Here, you can eat my book, Jason, said Todd. I don't like it anyway. Mrs. Jules made Todd write his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Jason was so mad at himself, he broke the chewed-up pencil to bits. That wasn't a smart thing to do. Everybody, take out a pencil and a piece of paper, said Mrs. Jules. It's time for our spelling test. Jason slapped himself on the forehead. I'm so stupid, he thought. Rondi, may I borrow a pencil, please? He asked. Rondi made a face. All my pencils are new, she said. How do I know you won't eat it? I won't, said Jason. I promise. You better not, said Rondi. She gave him one of her pencils. It was new and freshly sharpened. Jason liked the way it smelled. The first word is orchestra, said Mrs. Jules. Jason tried to remember how to spell orchestra. He stuck the back of the pencil to his mouth. Second word, garbanzo. Jason chewed on the eraser. When the spelling test was over, Rondi's pencil was worse than Allison's. Jason looked at it in horror. He didn't even remember chewing it. Oh no, he thought. What am I going to do? He stuck it inside his desk. Jason, may I have my pencil back, please? Asked Rondi. What pencil? Asked Jason. The one I lent you, said Rondi. Jason opened his desk and pretended to look for it. I don't know where it is, he said. Mrs. Jules, Jason stole my pencil, called Rondi. Jason, give Rondi back her pencil, said Mrs. Jules. He gave it to her. You chewed on it, exclaimed Rondi. Everyone laughed. No, I didn't, said Jason. Those are your teeth marks. How can they be my teeth marks? Asked Rondi. She smiled. She was missing her 2 front teeth. So, said Jason, you don't chew pencils with your front teeth, you chew them with your back teeth. How do you know? Asked Rondi. Said Jason. Mrs. Jules made Jason write his name on the board under the word discipline because he chewed Rondi's pencil, then lied about it. And try not to eat the chalk, she said. Everyone laughed. Rondi threw the chewed-up pencil out the window. It hit Louis on the head. Mrs. Jules gave Damien a stack of worksheets and asked him to pass them out. They contained arithmetic problems. Jason had to borrow another pencil. "Allison, may I borrow another pencil, please?" he asked. "Eat my socks," said Allison. That wasn't such a bad idea, Jason realized. If he stuffed a sock in his mouth, he wouldn't be able to chew a pencil. Myron looked at his worksheet. "I don't feel like doing this stuff," he said. "Here, Jason, you can have my pencil." "Oh, thanks, Myron," said Jason. "I promise not to chew it." He hoped he'd be able to keep his promise. He thought about asking Mrs. Jules for a Tootsie Roll Pop. If I'm sucking on that, I won't chew Myron's pencil, and a Tootsie Roll Pop would probably taste better than Allison's socks. He didn't know for sure because he had never tasted Allison's socks. But before he could ask Mrs. Jules called him. "Jason, will you come here for a moment?" she said. "I think I know how to keep you from chewing pencils." Jason smiled as he walked to her desk. "I like the purple ones," he told her. But Mrs. Jules didn't give him a Tootsie Roll Pop. Instead, she taped his mouth shut with heavy-duty masking tape. She had to use a lot of tape because Jason had the second biggest mouth in the class. "There," she said. Jason started back to his seat. "Aren't you even going to say thank you?" asked Mrs. Jules. "Mm-hmm," said Jason. "You're welcome," said Mrs. Jules. "Hey, Jason," teased Allison, "you look like a mummy." "Don't sneeze," said Rondi. "You'll blow your head off." They both laughed. "Mm-hmm," Jason said back to them. It was a very bad thing to say. He wasn't supposed to use words like that. "You better not pull the tape off," said Rondi. "You might rip off your lips." They both laughed again. Jason had never been more embarrassed in his whole life. His ears burned as he set to work on the arithmetic problems. They were tough problems. Several times the pencil crashed against the tape, but the tape held firm. Mrs. Jules was very proud of herself. Not only did the tape protect Myron's pencil, but Mrs. Jules also noticed that Jason was quieter than he'd ever been. "I should tape all their mouths shut," she thought. "Then they'd be so nice and quiet." It was such a good idea she wondered why no other teacher had ever thought of it.